All right, so I got a question for you guys as we begin. Have you ever had that feeling in life that life's not fair? Right? Like this moment where you realize life isn't fair. I think back to when I was in my early 20s. I was working at my first church. Now, keep in mind that this church was also my home church, so I had been there for a long time. They've seen me grow up. I volunteered and served a ton, and so they knew who I was, and they knew that I felt called into ministry, and so at some point they offered me a job, and I thought I was running the world. I was on top of the world because I was working part-time. But this is what I wanted to do. So I was working part-time, but putting in full-time hours, and it was amazing until a couple years later, they hire another guy about my age. This guy comes in, and not only do they hire him, but they offer him a full-time position. So I'm like, that's interesting. Then I noticed that he's like the shiny new penny, meaning he's got all the attention. It's like he's got a fast pass up the ladder of leadership at the church. And then I'm not gonna lie, I begin to stress. Like I begin to get worked up, but I'm dealing with it, all right? Until there was a day that an email went out from our finance department to everyone on staff. And this email contained a document that was a spreadsheet that had a breakdown of everyone's salaries included. Now, I know that you're not supposed to talk about how much money you make or discuss with other people you work with how much money they make. Now I know why, because this email comes out, but then immediately another email came out, because this is before you could unsend an email, which is like God's gift to earth, right? Almost immediately a second email went out, and the title of the email was, "Do not open the last email." The body of the email says, "There was a mistake. Do not open." So then I am forced to make a decision. What am I going to do? What do you think I would do? Guys, come on, shame on you. I'm a pastor. I play by the rules. Of course I opened the email. And what I found out immediately is how much more this guy was making, almost double what I was. And immediately I was crushed. You know how they say nice guys finish last? That is exactly how I felt. I was in last place, I was overlooked, and this is absolutely unfair. I was growing weary and I was becoming bitter. But here's what I know. I'm not the only one who's ever had a moment like that. I am not the only one who has had an experience like that. Times where you do the right thing, you play by the rules, and then some other joker comes in, they break all the rules, they play unfair, and not only do they get away with it, but in some cases it feels like they're actually rewarded for it. Or in some cases it feels like they're being blessed for it. Maybe that happened to you on your way here today. Like maybe you're that saint who, when you're driving, you're constantly letting people over in front of you, right? They're pulling out of a parking lot. Oh yeah, no problem, come on. Or maybe they just need to get over and it's being difficult. Hey, come on over. And if you're lucky, they'll give you one of these and like thank you, right? Or maybe you're merging and they're last minute, you're like, no worries, come on, right? Here's the problem. How many times does someone let you over when you need to get over? Hardly ever, right? It's not fair. Maybe you're trying to get your finances in order and you're going to make Dave Ramsey proud. So you create a budget, you cut up the credit cards, you're starting to build your emergency fund, but then it seems like everything, like literally everything is breaking. Everything needs to get repaired and you are stressed, but you're trying to figure it out, right? But then you look around at your friends and they are just living it up and having so much fun with their credit cards and all their debt, aren't they? And you're just thinking, this is not fair. This is not how it's supposed to work, right? Maybe for you it was a relationship. Maybe it was someone you were really, really close with. You guys were friends for a really, really long time. And then somehow, some way, they hurt you. And now you're watching and it seems like they found a new crew and everything is honky-dory, everything is amazing in their life, but you are feeling alone and you're still struggling with the hurt that they caused. We've all been there. Maybe you're there right now. So the question that we're going to tackle today is, what do you do when you face those situations? What are you going to do when it feels like the wickedness around you is winning? How will you react? How will you respond? How will you navigate those situations in a way that both honors God and brings you peace? Fortunately for us, David gives us the answer to that question in Psalm 37, which we will read as we close out this amazing series, The Anxiety Cure. Man, it has been so helpful for me. I have learned so much. Over what we've done over the last 7 weeks is did a total deep dive into Psalm 37. And if you've missed any of the weeks, I highly recommend that you get on our website, you go to YouTube, you check out your favorite podcast provider, and you get caught up. You binge it this weekend, all right? Because it has been so good, you want to get it all. But what we see throughout Psalm 37 is God's response to wickedness in the world. Because the reality is, all the problems that we have and the things that we wrestle with, I know it feels new, but it's not new. Wickedness is not new. David dealt with this as well. So in Psalm 37, what he does is he writes how he has seen God deal with the wickedness around him and how he has seen God care for those who are faithful. So what we're about to read is David's advice for those of us who are trying to do our best to live our lives rightly, but seem to keep losing out to the immoral. So let's look at chapter 37. We'll start in verse 35. David says, I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a luxuriant native tree. But he soon passed away and was no more. Though I looked for him, he could not be found. So what David is writing about is the exact experiences that we just talked about. That the wicked seem to thrive, that they're cheating and they continue to win, that they don't follow the rules, and not only do they win, but they're growing and appear like a healthy, luxurious tree. I'm picturing them to be like a tree with deep, solid roots, with plenty of green leaves and a delicious fruit, trees that everyone wants to be around because of the shade and how cool they are, and they're the fascination of everyone around them, and it doesn't seem fair, right? But David reminds us, as he's done over and over and over again in Psalm 37, that we do not need to get too worked up or stressed about this, that we don't need to give it too much mental energy, that we do not need to let these things live rent-free in our head, because even though it seems like they're thriving right now, it will soon pass, and they will be no more. They may be a luxurious tree right now, but soon enough, they're going to wither. Not only are they going to wither, they're going to die. And not only are they going to die, but at some point, there will be absolutely no evidence that they've even existed. Their time is coming. So what does that mean for us? What do we do when we feel like the wicked are winning? Well, let's start with what we don't do, all right? We don't need to worry about it, and we don't need to take things into our own hands. And I know that this is a very real temptation for us, that we want to put these people on blast. When the wicked are winning and people are cheating, we want to put them on blast. We want to post about them on social media. We want everyone to know how they are wrong and how we are right and we were wronged and it's not fair. I get it, I really do. But we don't have to. Why? Because David says God's got this. He reminds us of this over and over again in Psalm 37. Let's just revisit some of these. In verse 9, David says, refrain from anger and turn from wrath. Do not fret, it leads only to evil. For those who are evil will be destroyed. In verse 13, he says, the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he knows their day is coming. In verse 20, he says, but the wicked will perish. Though the Lord's enemies are like the flowers of the field, they will be consumed. They will go up in smoke. Finally, in verse 28, David reminds us, wrongdoers will be completely destroyed. The offspring of the wicked will perish. And that's pretty clear, isn't it? It's pretty direct, right? That we can trust God to handle the wickedness around us, so we don't need to be anxious. We don't need to be worried, that we can have peace because God's got it. And we certainly don't need to worry about handling things on our own. Instead, David tells us what we can do in verse 37. This is what he says. Consider the blameless, observe the upright. A future awaits those who seek peace, but all sinners will be destroyed. There will be no future for the wicked. And it's like David said, I know, you're still stuck on this second part, but they will be destroyed. So here's what you can do. Consider the blameless, observe the upright. Consider the blameless and observe the upright. Now that word consider is an interesting word to me because when I read the word consider is typically a suggestion in my opinion. So it feels like if you go to a car dealership, well, have you considered test driving the Subaru Outback? If you go to a restaurant, have you considered the smoked salmon? Right? It feels like, have you considered doing this? Maybe you should consider not doing that. It feels like a suggestion, but the word that David actually uses is much stronger than just a suggestion. Translated literally, that word consider means to keep, to have charge of, to guard, to watch like a watchman. David is telling us that we need to absolutely just focus in on the blameless, that we need to watch like a guard the upright. We need to lock in on good, positive influences. And he does this because he knows something about us that is true for all of us. That we are most drawn to watching the wicked rather than the righteous. That we would rather focus on the negative than the positive. That you and I, we would rather focus on the bad than the good. That you and I would rather get caught up on what we don't have rather than what we do have. That we all have this natural bent towards the negative. So we don't need to take things into our own hands, but we do need to be careful with what we give our attention to, because if we're not intentional, we can so easily get caught up in wickedness that it consumes us, that it begins to be all that we can focus on to the point where we are filled with anxiety and hopelessness. And this is where the big idea for the series comes in. Pastor Mike has referenced this week after week, and he says, misery is in the heart, not the circumstances. I want you to say it with me. Misery is in the heart, not the, very good. So we need to protect our hearts by limiting what we allow into them. A lot of the stress we feel isn't truly about what's going on around us, that it's mostly caused by what we let fill our hearts and our minds, which is why David is so adamant about what we focus on. It's why he cares about the things that we set our minds on, which is why what we let influence us matters. Now, I have a very deep theological principle for you to chew on for a moment. So if you have a pen, you want to write this down, maybe you want to pull out your notes app and type it in. This is big. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Yes. Thank you. All right, here it is. Garbage in, garbage out. I told you, it's profound, isn't it? Garbage in, garbage out. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, that what we experience and what we feel and what we do and what comes out of us is directly related to what we put in. So if we fill ourselves up with garbage, then that is what we're going to experience. For example, little fun fact about me, my kryptonite is peanut M&Ms. Man, they are so good. But here's don't come at me with the classic ones. Don't give me the pretzel ones. Ugh. The almond ones, or even the peanut butter. It's gotta be the pure peanut M&Ms. And if you really wanna make it even worse for me, don't give me a bag. I don't like the bag. You know why? Because the bag leaves a paper trail. The bag also has the calorie and the nutritional information, and no one needs to see that. No one needs to know about that stuff, right? So if you put peanut M&Ms in a bowl, I am in trouble. There's something about seeing those beautiful multicolored chocolate confectionery shimmering in the light that I just can't help myself. And here's what will happen. I will eat The entire thing. I will eat one after the other, and I will love every single one. It's amazing. Like, it truthfully is amazing how great they are and how many I can eat. They're both equally impressive. But here's the problem with eating a ton of peanut M&Ms, that it's really, really great on the front end. But then I'm really, really feeling bad on the back end. Eating what tastes good and eating what we crave, it's natural, but if we're not careful, it will make us sick. And not only our stomachs immediately after, but if left unchecked, we could experience some serious health issues. I mean, we know the flip side of that is true as well, right? That if we eat good, we feel good. That when we're eating good, we have more energy, our minds are more clear, that we're more satisfied, we're more fulfilled in the long run. And yeah, it's hard at the beginning, but we know the payoff is down at the end of the road and that we're feeling really, really good. And so here's the point that David is making. You can't always control the things happening around you, but you can control what you focus on. Because the wicked, they're going to be wicked. You can't stop them. You can't control them, but you can control what you give your attention to. You can control what you focus on. You can control what you consume. You can control what you fill your heart and mind with. Again, this is important because what you allow in is what comes out. And if we allow misery into our hearts, we will experience bitterness and anxiety and stress. The things that we allow in will have a direct impact on what we experience. And so what I want to do is just take a couple minutes and I want to talk through these things. I want to talk through who are you allowing to influence you. Then I want to talk through who or what are you watching closely. All right, so first, let's talk about the people in your life. What I want us all to do is check our circle. Who is our circle of friends? What does our circle of influence look like? Who do you surround yourself with? Growing up, I always heard this phrase over and over again. Maybe you did too. Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future, right? And here's what this means. That you can tell a lot about somebody. You can tell a lot about where they're headed. You can tell about the kind of experience that they're going to have in life. That you can tell so much about somebody based on who they spend their time with, about who they surround themselves with. The truth is that we become who we follow. That we become who we surround ourselves with. Or like Pastor Mike says all the time, that the voices around you become the voices inside you. And we've all done things influenced by other people, right? We've all watched TV shows or movies because someone in our circle told us we should check them out. We've all, well, not all, maybe some of you are crazier than me, have jumped out of perfectly good airplanes or bungee jumped because somebody in your circle said, yeah, it's a great idea, you're going to love it, we should do this, right? Maybe you can even think about words that you say, and the only reason why you use these words is because you know someone around you uses those words all the time. And so because they say it now, you say it, it's kind of rubbed off on you. We all share the opinions and beliefs of those that we surround ourselves with. And this can actually be a good thing. Like if you really want to level up, this could be a great life hack for you. So if you want to live a healthier life, surround yourself with people who are active. Surround yourself with people who eat good, and what's going to happen is eventually you will do the same. If you have a goal to read more books, then you should surround yourself with avid readers because eventually what's going to happen is you will want to do the same. If you want to become a better leader, if you surround yourself with great leaders, then naturally your capacity and your ability to lead will increase. If you want to get stronger in your faith, if you surround yourself with some very faithful people, then they will encourage you and your faith will grow because it's contagious. It will rub off on you. We all have had people that when we look back on our lives, we can directly attribute and think about how they made us better, that they've made us better people, that they've influenced in this way, that we are who we are because of them. But if we're not careful, this can also be a bad thing. Because if we spend all the time around a lot of people who gossip, eventually we'll get caught up in gossip. If we spend our times around negative people, then eventually it's just going to feel like we're living under a constant storm cloud. and everything we see will be negative. Or if you surround yourself with people who are always stressed out and anxious and worried, then eventually what's going to happen is you will be more inclined to be worried and anxious and stressed. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't be friendly with everyone, but our circle of friends is important. Our circle of friends, our circle of influence, they have a long-lasting, far-reaching impact on our lives. And because of that, we need to take responsibility for the people we let into our lives. We need to take ownership of the people that we allow to have an influence on us. And so David says that we need to consider the blameless, to observe the upright, and lock in on those who will positively influence us. Who or what we focus on matters. I love the way Paul talks about it in Colossians 3. He says, since then, you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. And so naturally, my question is, are you focused in on, are you locked in on earthly things or things above? Are you allowing earthly things or heavenly things to fill your heart? Because I think that there are far too many people who are way too focused on earthly things. That a lot of people pay a lot of attention to the news. That a lot of people spend a lot of time on social media. That a lot of people spend a lot of time on these things. And isn't it ironic to you, just as a quick aside, that we call these things phones? Because I can't even tell you the last time that I've actually used it to make a phone call. I heard a comedian say, he kind of described it best. He said, the phone is just a seldom used app on my phone. I mean, that's so accurate, isn't it? But just think about all the things that this allows us to do. All the text messages that we receive, all the social medias that we have constant access to with Facebook and Instagram and X and TikTok and LinkedIn and Pinterest, all these different things. Then there's YouTube, which is fantastic, but you can get sucked into a rabbit hole super quick, right? Then there's email, which I learned that you and I send and receive on average 121 emails a day. You can use this to listen to music and podcasts. What this has become is more than a phone. This is a constant source of information that is coming at you nonstop, all day, every day. I recently read a book a little while ago called Digital Minimalism, where the author, Cal Newport, likens our phones to slot machines in our pockets, that our phones are addictive for a lot of the same reasons that people are addicted to slot machines. That every time we refresh, when you swipe down and it refreshes, the same thing happens in our brain as if we were pulling the lever on a slot machine. That it releases dopamine, which is the pleasure chemical, into our system. And so we keep coming back because we want more and more and more. And just like pulling a lever on a slot machine, we keep wanting to refresh and pull it over and over and over again to see what we get. But instead of looking for cherries and horseshoes and jackpots, we're looking for thumbs up and likes and comments and new attractive headlines to give our attention to. We're hoping that with each refresh that we see something new and exciting. And the app builders and programmers use this addictive nature against us, and they intentionally build apps that keep us coming back for more and more and more. And they're good at what they do too, because on average, we spend 2 hours and 33 minutes per day just on social media. That's the equivalent of 39 full days per year just on social media. Research shows that they keep us checking our smartphones every 15 minutes or less. And here's why this is problematic. It's because it's keeping our focus on the wrong things. It's keeping our focus on earthly things. It's letting misery fill our hearts. I just recently saw that the American Psychological Association was saying that there is a growing correlation that they're seeing between the amount of news and social media that we consume and the amount of anxiety and PTSD symptoms that we experience. So that the more and more we pay attention to the news and the more and more we pay attention to social media, the more and more that people are struggling with anxiety and worry and depression. Listen, our phones social media, and even the news has been scientifically proven to be addictive and designed for us to waste our lives. And not only are they addictive, but they have been scientifically proven to fill us with stress, anxiety, and lead us towards total burnout. Now, don't get me wrong, technology can be great. There are so many amazingly helpful and life-giving things that we have access to through podcasts and so many different study tools and even personalities and encouraging social media influencers. This technology can be helpful, but it can also be dangerous because garbage in, garbage out. What we put in will come out, and it just leads to misery in our hearts. The quality of our lives are greatly impacted by these things, and so we need to guard ourselves against it. So what guardrails can we put in place? How much time do we really want to spend with this stuff? We need to really think about what accounts we follow or what accounts we unfollow. How can we enjoy the good parts of social media and technology without being consumed by the bad? How can we use this stuff and set our focus and set our minds on things above and not on earthly things? David ends Psalm 37 on a positive note to encourage those of us who do our best to follow the Lord and live righteous lives. He says this in verse 39. The salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their stronghold in time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him. Now, I have a warped way of looking at things, but here's how I interpret this. This is what comes to mind for me. My brother Alex is a beast, all right? 6'3", 230 pounds, just a wall of straight muscle. He's a professional fighter, one of the top heavyweight fighters in all the world, okay? And like next level savage, because he's into the bare knuckle MMA stuff, so that means like no gloves. And so like it's extra hardcore. Here's my point. There are not many places that I can go if Alex is with me that I'm scared, right? I'm not worried. There's nothing that can go on around me that's got me stressed when he's with me because I know he's got my back. Like, there is nothing that I can encounter. There's not anyone or anything that can come at me that I'm scared of if he's with me because I know he'll take them out for me, right? Because he is with me, I have a sense of peace. And I tell you this first because you should know that in case you try to come at me, all right? You better check yourself before you wreck yourself. But I also tell you this because when I'm with him, I have a sense of peace because I know that he's got my back. And in a similar way, this is what David is reminding us with at the end of Psalm 37. This is how we should feel about God. David is reminding us that God has got our back. He's reminding us that the creator of the universe is on your side. And he holds all things together. He's in absolute total control. And unlike the creation, the creator never changes. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And he's just. But not only is he just, but he reminds us time and time and time again that vengeance is his. So we don't need to worry about it. And unlike my brother-in-law, Alex, who's just a human being, who's not omnipresent, God is with us all the time. And he's promised that he is with us, that he will never leave us nor forsake us, that he goes before us and he's there behind us, that he is with us at all times. And because our God is good, we have a choice to make today. Because again, it is so easy for us to get stuck on the negative. We have a natural bent that way. And so what that means is that it's so easy for us to focus on all the wrong that's happening around us. This is why watching social media and the news is so dangerous, because if we're not careful, we'll pay attention to all the wrong all around the world to the point where it's just too much for us to handle. We can't take it all in. And so because of that, we are overwhelmed and we are stressed and we are broken down. It's easy for us to focus on a lot of the problems around us and forget that God has made a ton of promises to us. So we have to choose today. Are we going to focus on the problems, or are we going to focus on God's problems or promises? Are we going to focus on the problems, or are we going to focus on God's promises? Promises like, we can be confident that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. And the God of all grace, who called you to his eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. The righteous person may have many troubles, but the Lord delivers him from them all. The list of promises go on and on and on. And here's the thing. God won't let us down on a single one of them. God will never fail us on his promises. We can take them to the bank. So the question for you today is, will you trust them? Will you rest in God's promises? Will you focus on your problems, or will you focus on God's promises? Because misery is in the heart, not the circumstances. And the cure to the misery in our hearts, the cure to the anxiety we feel, is knowing that this is not the end for us. Friends, our eternity is already secured for us in Christ. Jesus has already won, so take heart. He's already overcome this world, and he's got our backs. He promises to deliver us from the wicked. He promises to rescue us and to save us. And my hope and prayer is that you will take refuge in that you will find sanctuary in that you will find rest in that. So keep your eyes on him. Check your circle. Make sure to focus and set your mind on things above and to always guard your heart. And remember that even when life seems to be unfair, even when it seems like the wicked around you are winning, remember even then that good is ahead.